I don't age. I level up.
I'm 84 today, but I feel like I'm 48. God bless you all.
I hear you think you could take me on. You know what happened to the last guy who said that? Yeah.
On March 10th, 2026, he dropped a video straight out of Hawaii, casually training Matt Pacific's son in the background, moving like time forgot him. At 86, he was sparring with someone half his age like it was nothing. Then he looks dead into the camera, flashes that confident grin and says, "I don't age, I level up." And just like that, the internet lost its mind. Comments flooded in, fans hyping him up like he was untouchable.
Did you know that I got bit by a king cobra?
Here we go. Take a look at this.
Hey there. But now we'll show you what really happened in slow motion.
All right, watch this very carefully, slow motion. There's his hand, there's Walker's hand, the right hand. There's the snake. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he got me.
Like what, you see that every day on the subway? Man, are you all right?
And after 5 days of agonizing pain, the cobra died.
For a moment, it really felt like Chuck Norris couldn't be stopped, like he was built different in every way. But 9 days later, everything flipped. The Norris family released a statement that hit like a shockwave. "It is with heavy hearts that our family shares the sudden passing of our beloved Chuck Norris. No warning, no slow goodbye, nothing to prepare people for it. The same man the world had turned into a symbol of pure toughness, the guy the internet joked about being immortal for years, was suddenly gone. Just like that. Gone. At 86, only 10 days after that birthday video in the place he loved most, everything went quiet. No jokes this time, no fake headlines, none of those recycled rumors people used to brush off. This wasn't one of those stories, it was real. And the silence that followed? It felt heavy, different. Like people didn't know how to react without the memes to hide behind. Because deep down, under all those wild jokes about Chuck Norris never dying, there was something real people held on to.
It was a situation that I, as a child, had encountered about his age. I went to a school in Arizona that was mostly Indians from the reservation. And there was this one Indian kid who just didn't like me, and every day he'd chase me home from school. And I'd have to run by this gas station, and this mechanic would watch me being chased by this Indian kid every day. And finally, he just couldn't handle it anymore, and he stopped me and made me face this boy. And I told him I'm scared, and he says, well, and what he said to me, which is still true, which I remember, is that he says, you know, that running from your fear is more painful than facing it. And that's something I've always remembered.
Not like they truly thought he'd live forever, but more like he represented someone who just doesn't quit, no matter what. So what really went down in those final days in Hawaii? What was building up behind that last birthday smile? And who was he when the legend faded out? Before the fame, before the larger-than-life image, there was just a kid with odds stacked against him. No spotlight, no cheers, no big moments waiting. Just Ryan, Oklahoma, a quiet town where dreams didn't just fade, they got buried under dust like everything else. Born March 10th, 1940, Carlos Ray Norris came into a world that wasn't exactly welcoming. His family was already struggling before it even had a chance to feel whole. His father, Ray Norris, came back from World War II carrying pain nobody could see, a man battling his own demons, lost in alcohol, distant even when he was right there in the room. His father drifted in and out of their lives like a cold wind, always there for a moment, then gone again before anything could settle. Nobody could hold him down, nobody could fix what was already broken. But his mother, Wilma, was built completely different. Strong, faithful, and steady under pressure, she carried the weight of raising 3 boys mostly on her own, stretching every dollar until it almost snapped, holding that family together with worn hands and a belief that refused to crack no matter how hard life pushed back.
Who gave you the nickname first?
I joined when I went in the military, and I'm in boot camp, and the Hispanic guy says, "You know what the name Carlos means in English?" I said, "Yeah, it's Charles." He says, "Yeah, and the nickname for Charles is Chuck, and I'm going to call you Chuck." And for some reason, it stuck with me, and from that point on, everyone called me Chuck, so I just stuck with it.
When his parents finally split, young Carlos didn't just lose a father. He lost any sense of stability. He moved with his mom and brothers, first to Prairie Village, Kansas, then all the way to Torrance, California. Every move felt like starting over from zero. Like roots were something only other families got to have. In school, he stayed quiet, tucked in the back, barely noticed. Mixed Irish and Cherokee, but too shy to even stand out. His stutter made things worse, turning simple words into stressful moments that felt way bigger than they should have. He even admitted later, straight up, that he was scared of conflict back then. Not the tough guy people would later swear he always was. No fighter, no fearless warrior, just a kid trying to stay out of the way, hoping not to be seen at all.
And of course, these are all my books that I've written over the years. I've done 2 trips to Iraq, 2006 and 2007. So I went over there and I went to 17 different bases and camps and shook hands and took pictures with 20,000 troops in 2006. And then I went over and did it again in 2007.
Are you really popular among the military guys?
Oh my gosh, one guy, they said, "Hey, one of the troopers had a jumpsuit on. They said, show Chuck. Pulls down his arm. He's got a picture of me on his arm. I go, "Guy, that's on there for the rest of your life." But they had my name on tanks and carriers and all this stuff.
But in 1958, at just 18, everything started to shift in a way nobody saw coming. He joined the United States Air Force, not for glory, not for pride, but to get out of poverty, out of confusion, and away from the fear that he might end up exactly like his father. That decision took him all the way to Osan Air Base in South Korea, and that's where something clicked. In a place far from home, surrounded by discipline and structure, Carlos found martial arts, and it changed everything. He got into Tang Soo Do almost by accident, but once he started, he locked in. The focus, the control, the silence. It gave him something he had never felt before. For a kid who grew up feeling powerless, this wasn't just fighting. It was a whole new way to exist. A message without words telling him, "You are enough." And he took that seriously. He trained hard, nonstop, pushing himself until he earned his black belt. So when he came back to the U.S. in 1962 as an airman first class, he wasn't that same quiet kid anymore. Back in California, waiting on a police job that never showed up, he didn't sit around. He opened a small martial arts studio and started building something from scratch. He stepped into competitions. And yeah, at first, he lost. Big names like Joe Louis and Alan Steen handed him defeats round after round. But even when he felt like he should have won, he didn't fold under pressure. He stayed in it, kept showing up, and refused to back down.
I said, "Steve, you haven't really learned your techniques that well yet."
Right.
And he said, I want to spar with you. I said, "All right, if you want to spar." So we get up there and I send him flying across the room with a kick, But I tell you, he gets back up and he says, "That was good, that's good." And he kept right on fighting. And I kept beating the daylights out of him, But he got better and better, though.
He came back sharper. He adjusted, he pushed harder, and he refused to break. By 1967, Chuck Norris flipped the script completely, winning the tournament of karate after taking down 7 opponents back-to-back. That title once felt out of reach, like something meant for someone else, but he took it anyway. The same kid who used to stay invisible, who struggled to even speak without fear, had now stepped into the spotlight as a full-on champion. But here's the twist. He still hadn't seen his toughest battles yet, because stepping into Hollywood in the early 1970s, that was a whole different fight. Nobody was waiting for him there. No agents, no acting background, no connections. Just a quiet martial artist from Oklahoma trying to break into a world that didn't even know his name. But what Hollywood didn't realize yet was that everything was about to shift, and Bruce Lee was right at the center of it.
Chuck Norris is currently suing NBC, claiming Law and Order are trademark names for his left and right leg. Yeah.
I went in and I bent down and I petted him, and all of a sudden you hear this like that. So the trainer says, get up very slowly and back up. So the tiger did. He slowly got up and backed out.
Chuck Norris's tears cure cancer. Too bad he never cries, ever. They wanted to put Chuck Norris's face on Mount Rushmore, but the granite wasn't hard enough for his beard.
Through his martial arts studio, Chuck crossed paths with Bruce Lee, and that moment changed everything. Bruce had heard whispers about this skilled fighter training celebrities in Los Angeles, so he pulled up to see it for himself. What started as a simple meeting turned into something real, a strong friendship built on respect, discipline, and that shared hunger to be the best. They trained together, pushed each other to the edge, leveling up side by side. Then, in 1972, Bruce gave Chuck a shot that would shake his whole future. He cast him in Way of the Dragon as Colt, the one man strong enough to stand against Bruce Lee on screen. And that Coliseum fight? Legendary. No music, no distractions, just two fighters, pure tension, and a moment that hit like lightning before the first move even landed. Chuck wasn't a star before that, but after. Everybody knew his face. Still, that rise came with a heavy loss. In 1973, Bruce Lee died suddenly at just 32, and that hit hard. Chuck didn't speak on it much, kept it low-key, but years later he made it clear. Bruce was one of the most remarkable people he had ever known. He said the world lost something it could never replace, and more than that, he never forgot what it felt like to have someone like Bruce believe in him when he didn't have to. That kind of loss could have shut him down, but it didn't. It pushed him forward even more. With encouragement from his close friend Steve McQueen, who saw real potential in him, Chuck kept moving, kept building, and stepped deeper into a world that once had no space for him. At that point, Chuck was still figuring himself out, even as the world started watching. He went all in on acting, but the Shuruat wasn't smooth at all. Low-budget films, barely any dialogue, and critics quick to label him as stiff, limited, just a fighter pretending to act. But while critics talked, audiences paid attention in a different way.
About 10 years ago, martial arts was outlawed in Russia. And if you used it, they put you in jail. And so they trained underground, but they had no teachers. And they were using my pirated movies, tapes, to train. Yeah, use the training aids. And so I went over there. I was like their mentor. You know, I was very surprised. And so at this kickboxing event, they had a facility of like 30,000 people. When the word got out I was going to be there, they sold it out in like 5 hours. And it was amazing because
movies like Breaker, Breaker in 1977 and Good Guys Wear Black in 1978 started pulling real fans who saw something deeper in him. Then came The Octagon in 1980, and from there, it kept building. Film after film, Chuck Norris created a loyal following, people who connected with him because he didn't feel fake. Hollywood was full of polished performances, but Chuck? He moved like someone who had actually been through it. No extra flair, no overacting, just raw presence that hit different. By the mid-1980s, he wasn't just known, he was a box office force. Missing in Action, Code of Silence, Delta Force. These weren't artsy films trying to impress critics. They were bold, intense, and straight to the point, and audiences showed up heavy for them. He didn't have Stallone's loud charisma or Schwarzenegger's larger-than-life spectacle, but that's exactly why he stood out. There was something quieter about him, and somehow that made him feel even more real. But the real shift? That came with television. Walker, Texas Ranger hit screens in 1993 and ran strong for 8 seasons until 2001. Every week, Cordell Walker showed up laying down justice with his fists, his faith, and a code that never bent. The critics didn't hype it, but the people did. Millions stayed locked in, loyal to a character who felt like the kind of man they hoped still existed, honest, steady, and unshakable. Then, in 2010, things got even more real. The state of Texas made it official. Chuck Norris was sworn in as an actual Texas Ranger. Not just on TV, this was real life. The moment hit deep, like everything had come full circle, from a quiet kid in Oklahoma to standing inside the very institution he once represented on screen. And just when it seemed like his story couldn't get any bigger, the internet stepped in and took it to another level. Suddenly, Chuck Norris became something nobody could have scripted. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups, he pushes the earth down. The jokes were wild, over the top, and everywhere. But underneath all that humor, it was respect. A strange but powerful way the world showed love to a man who had become bigger than any role he ever played. And the best part? He leaned into it. He laughed right along with it. He didn't fight the jokes. He embraced them. And in doing that, he showed a whole different side people didn't expect. Beneath the tough guy image, there was real warmth, real humility, and the kind of confidence that doesn't need to prove anything.
Are you surprised when you understand the scope of your popularity?
It's kind of mind-boggling, really.
Were you in the Army?
Air Force.
Air Force.
Yeah, my brother, this is my brother's dress uniform. He was killed in Vietnam.
I'm sorry.
And so we have his dress uniform, and he was one of my black belts too. This is his black belt certificate, and he was on my fighting.
The legend was already locked in, no doubt, but behind it, time was catching up quietly. The world saw the kicks, the unshaken stare, the man who never backed down. But what they didn't see, the weight he carried when nobody was watching. Because behind that strong exterior, loss kept stacking up year after year. In private, away from cameras and crowds, reality looked very different. Chuck Norris wasn't just a symbol. He was a man dealing with real pain, real history, and choices that stayed with him. He had loved Diane Holacek since he was just 16. They met at North High School in Torrance, California, a quiet kid from Oklahoma and a girl who somehow saw straight through his silence. They got married in 1958, still basically kids, and she stood by him for 3 decades, through the broke years, the endless training, the rejection from Hollywood, and the slow grind toward success. She was there for all of it. But their story wasn't perfect, not even close. During his time in the military, Chuck made a decision that left a lasting mark. He was unfaithful and fathered a daughter, Dina, with another woman while still married to Diane. For years, he said nothing about it publicly. Then in his 2024 memoir, he finally spoke on it, direct and honest, making it clear he wasn't running from the truth anymore, even when it looked bad. Dina eventually found him in 1991, and he welcomed her into his life. But by then, the damage to his marriage had already gone deep. Chuck and Diane separated in 1988 and officially divorced in 1989, closing a 30-year chapter that had seen everything from struggle to success. But here's where things took a different turn. Instead of cutting ties completely, Chuck stayed close to Diane, not out of obligation, but real respect and history. In a social media post near the end of 2025, he called her an incredible person, someone kind, intelligent, and full of life. The woman who believed in him before anyone else did never lost her place in his world. Then in December 2025, another heavy moment hit.
I was a professional fighter for about 12 years. And so I know what it's like to be in the arena and facing off.
They're just actors.
Well, no, they're martial artists too.
Oh, they are?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Could you beat them?
I'm not going to answer that.
No, I mean, just between you and me. I won't tell anyone. Just, just between you and me.
I'd kick their butt.
Oh, really? He said that he thought they would probably win.
Diane passed away at her home in Texas at 84 after a long fight with dementia. Her son, Mike, said it simply, "We are thankful she is no longer suffering. She was the greatest mom." That kind of loss doesn't make noise. It just hits deep. Chuck responded in his own way, posting a black and white photo from 1975. The two of them, young, standing with their sons, frozen in a moment that felt untouched by time. No long message, no dramatic words, just that image said everything. And just like that, it became the second massive loss he faced in barely a year, stacking weight on a man the world always thought couldn't be shaken. His mother, Wilma, the same strong woman who raised 3 boys through struggle and uncertainty, lived all the way to 103 years old. She had carried her faith like armor, standing firm through poverty, heartbreak, and years of being left to handle everything on her own. When she passed, it hit deep. Chuck's tribute was short, but it carried real weight. He said she was a woman of unwavering faith, a true light, and that her love reflected something bigger than words could explain. She had outlived almost everyone from her time, but even that kind of strength doesn't stop the impact of loss. Her passing left a silence that couldn't be filled, especially coming so close to everything else he had already been dealing with. But even with that pain, it wasn't the hardest thing he had faced. The deepest wound in Chuck Norris's private life didn't come from death. It came from watching someone he loved suffer in real time. In 2012, his second wife, Gina, went in for a series of MRI scans. What should have been routine turned into something much more serious. After those procedures, her health took a sharp turn. She began dealing with intense shaking, numbness, burning sensations all over her body, and serious cognitive issues. It didn't stop there. Her kidneys were affected, and the pain became constant, refusing to ease up no matter what treatments they tried. Chuck believed the cause was gadolinium, a contrast agent used during MRIs. According to their legal case, it didn't leave her system the way it was supposed to. Instead, they claimed it stayed in her body, settling into her tissues, bones, and organs, slowly breaking her down from the inside. For a man known for staying calm under pressure, this was different. Chuck Norris, who had faced every kind of on-screen enemy without hesitation, was now standing in hospital hallways watching his wife struggle day by day. He said it plainly. Nothing's going on here.
No, my limit's about, in my movies. I think my limit's about 8.
That's
in my movies.
But you know, in the movies, whenever a crowd of like 50 guys surrounds someone like you in a movie, the guy comes at you one at a time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's true.
That's true.
It's like 15 guys surround you and they've got lead pipes and everything. Well, then they come at you one at one, and it's just like...
What's the only way you can win?
Yeah, but if we have 200 people here tonight. If they all rushed right now, we could take him.
She's dying right in front of me. And this time, there was no script, no control. Just raw emotion. But he didn't sit still. He fought back the only way he knew how, by going all in. They searched for answers across the United States, trying everything they could. Eventually, they even traveled to China, looking into alternative treatments like chelation therapy and stem cell procedures. The cost stacked up fast, nearly $2 million spent trying to get her back to stability. Then in 2017, they took legal action, filing a $10 million lawsuit against the companies behind the gadolinium agents. It wasn't just about their situation. It was about calling attention to what they believed others were quietly going through without answers. The case was later withdrawn without a settlement. But that didn't erase what it stood for. At its core, it was about a husband refusing to stand by and feel powerless, pushing back with everything he had. Even when the outcome wasn't guaranteed, he spent everything he had, time, money, energy, just to keep the woman he loved alive. And that showed a side of Chuck Norris no movie ever captured. He was always the guy who never backed down, never lost. But in real life, his toughest fight wasn't against an opponent. It was in quiet hospital rooms, sitting beside Gina, holding her hand, while she depended on him to be exactly who he said he was. And somehow, she made it. Gina survived. She recovered. But those years didn't just pass. They left marks that don't fade. They changed him, gave him a deeper sense of humility, a softer edge, and a sharp awareness that everything you care about can disappear faster than you expect. By the time 2026 came around, Chuck had already carried more loss than most people ever face. His mother, gone. His first wife, gone. Gina had survived, but the fight they went through left its own weight behind. You could see it in him, the lines on his face, the slower movements, the way people close to him noticed he wasn't pretending anymore, that time wasn't catching up.
I think people know, most people know, obviously you aren't an actor who dabbles in martial arts. You are a true martial artist.
Yeah, that dabbles in acting, really. Yeah, this is when I won the title right here. That's Louis Delgado, and I'm going down to punch him in the head. This photo came out. Louis comes up and says, "It must have been your mother down there in the audience taking that picture." I said, "I don't know who took it, Louis."
He was 85 when Diane passed in December 2025. He shared that photo, wrote his words, and then did what he had always done. He kept moving forward. No breakdowns in public, no dramatic scenes, just action. He went to Hawaii. Kauai became his escape, his quiet zone where life slowed down and expectations disappeared. Out there, things felt different. The light hit softer, the air felt lighter, and he could just be himself again. Training on the beach in the early mornings, no spotlight, no pressure, just movement. For Chuck, that wasn't just exercise, it was belief. Discipline wasn't optional. It was part of who he was, moving his body, pushing himself. That was his way of staying grounded, of staying connected to something deeper. Then March 10th, 2026 hit. He turned 86, and he marked it in a way only he could. He posted that video from Hawaii, sun behind him, mat under his feet, still putting in work. There he was, the same guy who once felt invisible, now sparring with someone half his age like it was nothing. Every move sharp, controlled, like decades hadn't slowed him down one bit. When it ended, he looked straight into the camera, breathing steady, and dropped that line with a calm confidence that said everything he'd been through mattered. "I don't age, I level up." And just like that, the internet went wild again. Fans poured in, showing love, bringing back all those classic Chuck Norris jokes, but this time it felt different. For that moment, it didn't feel like a character or a meme. It felt real, like somehow, after everything he had faced, everything he had lost and survived, Chuck Norris was still standing strong, still pushing forward, and still looking untouchable in a way that didn't need exaggeration.
And Monica, my fiancée, was really putting it together. And I finally realized how stressful it was. I came home one night and I look out in the backyard and here she is with a drink and a cigarette in her hand. She hadn't smoked in 4 years and she's out in the backyard, crying. I go, I think there's a problem here. So I went out and we talked about it. She says, what are we going to do? We get more and more people calling saying, how come we haven't gotten our invitation to the wedding? And family members who we hadn't heard from in 15 years. And so I said, she said, I don't know what to do. I said, let's just stop, regroup, and do what we originally were going to do, just have immediate family and have a small wedding. And so that's what we did. But we still went on our honeymoon to Greece. We took I cruised the Greek islands for about 9 days.
So you did get married, or you're going to get married later?
Going to get married later.
With the just immediate family and me, of course.
Yeah, of course you will.
All right.
Absolutely.
A man who, for 86 years, refused to live halfway. He showed up fully, every single time. Then, just 9 days later, everything changed without warning. A close friend who spoke to Chuck on Wednesday, March 18th, said he sounded great. Positive, joking, still training, fully locked in like always. Nothing felt off. Nothing hinted that anything serious was coming. No signs, no warnings, just normal life moving forward. But that same day, or maybe in the early hours of Thursday the 19th, something hit fast. A sudden medical emergency on the island of Kauai turned everything upside down. It happened so quickly that even the people closest to him didn't see it coming. One moment he was fine, the next he was in the hospital, and nobody outside that circle knew what was really going on. The family kept the details private. They didn't explain the exact cause, didn't open that door to the public. But what they did share stopped everything. On the morning of March 20th, 2026, the Norris family posted a message that hit like a wave across the world. It is with heavy hearts that our family shares the sudden passing of our beloved Chuck Norris yesterday morning. While we would like to keep the circumstances private, please know that he was surrounded by his family and was at peace. He was 86 years old. Just 10 days earlier, he was training, moving, smiling in that birthday video. Full of energy, full of life.
If you see my movies, though, generally, like in Code of Silence I did in Chicago, I get jumped by a bunch of guys. And I lose. I get beat up, you know. Because in my mind, you know, you got to be logical to a certain extent.
You want there to be a little bit of realism.
A little bit of reality there. And you know, I do. I get beat up real bad in that scene there. Because I thought, there's 12 guys. There's no way that I can really take and win that fight. And I didn't.
Showing that same drive people had watched for decades. And then just like that, with a speed that didn't match anything else in his story, he was gone. The rest of the statement kept it simple, but it said everything that needed to be said. To the world, he was a martial artist, actor, and a symbol of strength. To us, he was a devoted husband, a loving father and grandfather, an incredible brother, and the heart of our family. Those words hit hard, because that's who he really was beyond the spotlight. Faith, purpose, commitment, that wasn't just talk. That was how he lived every single day. From military bases in Korea to small martial arts studios filled with sweat and ambition, to hospital rooms where he stood by his wife and refused to walk away. Even in quiet mornings in Hawaii, he kept going. Training, moving, throwing punches into the air, not for show, but because stopping wasn't an option. To him, stopping meant giving in. And that's something Chuck Norris never did. For years, the internet joked that he couldn't die, that he was somehow beyond it all. But when the news became real, everything went quiet. Because this wasn't a meme. This wasn't a punchline. This was a real man with a real life. And he was gone. In the days that followed, the tributes came from everywhere.
Well, this brings up something. You were in one of Bruce Lee's great movies.
Return of the Dragon.
Return of the Dragon. Yeah. And this is a famous fight scene that you had with Bruce Lee.
I still consider it a classic.
It holds up. I watched it today, and you know they've advanced fight scenes so much, but this really holds up. It's an amazing fight scene.
Well, I think the main reason, Bruce was really ahead of his time. And I worked out with Bruce Lee, and I worked out for 3 years. That's when I held the world title. And then he went to Hong Kong to pursue his movie career, did a couple movies, very successful. So he called me up and said, you know, I want to do a movie with a fight scene that everyone will remember called Return of the Dragon. He said, would you come over and do the fight scene with me? I said, well, do I have to lose? He says, yeah, you have to lose. So I said, all right. So I went over there, and you know, I'd seen his first 2 movies. I said, you know, the guys you fight don't even have a chance. I mean, they don't even touch you, you know? And he said, no, we'll make this a seesaw battle. And so we made it fight back and forth. And
leaders, families, fans, and even soldiers who remembered watching Walker, Texas Ranger, on small screens far from home. Generations of people who grew up believing, even just a little, that Chuck Norris was something different, something bigger than life itself. Chuck Norris was never the kind of man people thought could die. Martial artists trained because of him. Veterans felt understood because of him. Regular people going through real struggles, looked at his story and saw hope. A quiet guy from nowhere proving that you could still rise up and become something powerful. And the internet? The same place turned him into a legend of pure invincibility suddenly went quiet. The jokes slowed down. And what replaced them felt real. Honest grief, no filters, no punchlines. Because those memes were never just jokes. They were respect in disguise. They were about the man behind it all. The shy kid with a stutter, the boy who grew up without stability, who faced loss early and carried it with him, a man who watched his loved ones struggle and never walked away, who stood strong in hospital rooms, who trained alone on a Hawaiian beach at 86, not for attention, but because discipline meant everything to him. He never acted like he was perfect. He owned his mistakes, spoke on them clearly, and didn't hide from the hard parts of his life. His story wasn't clean, it was real. From the dusty roads of Oklahoma to the training floors in Korea, from standing beside Bruce Lee to standing beside Gina in her toughest moments.
How did you first hear that you were getting sort of this resurgence with the Chuck Norris facts?
About 11 years ago, a college kid from Brown University sent me 3 Chuck Norris facts. And I'm reading them, and the first one was they wanted to put Chuck Norris on Mount Rushmore, but the granite wasn't tough enough for his beard. I thought, this is pretty funny. Well, the college crowd started gravitating to him and started making up their own Chuck Norris facts. Then it went to the high schools and the elementary schools, and then it just started going all worldwide.
Every chapter showed the same truth. It wasn't about never falling, it was about what he did after every fall. He made it through poverty. He pushed past rejection. He carried grief that could have broken most people and still kept moving forward. And when his time finally came, it wasn't in chaos or fear. He passed peacefully, surrounded by family, on an island filled with light. Just 10 days after showing the world he was still active, still fighting, still alive. Carlos Ray Norris, born March 10, 1940, in Ryan, Oklahoma, passed March 19, 2026, in Kauai, Hawaii, at 86 years old, martial artist, actor, veteran, husband, father, grandfather, a man of faith. The real legend was never just the strength people saw on screen. It was the life he lived behind it. A man who had every reason to quit, but never did. If this story hit you in any way, don't just scroll past it. Drop a comment and share your thoughts or a memory. Let it be heard. Hit that like button so more people can see this story. Subscribe to keep these stories alive and spreading. And share this with someone who needs a reminder that strength doesn't come from perfection. It comes from not giving up.